English in the United States, which is kind of some of the discussions we've been having, and listening to the dilemmas of young Armenians growing up and who would like to participate with the bigger family of Armenians. And, so collecting some liturgy books that have it all in traditional Armenian and with English next to it, and trying to look at that over the years and trying to make some heads or tails. A number of years ago, I put this little outline that you have. This is a really short outline of the Divine Liturgy, or soup. The word soup means holy. I asked over Paul and our other experts here, you can correct me if I'm maybe my pronunciation.
So good.
Thanks. So it was part of an interfaith thing I did in Los Angeles. We were talking about different liturgies, and this was a presentation I gave. And thought it might be helpful because I know when I've gone into like Orthodox churches, other liturgies, it's hard to follow, especially when everything's in another language. And if you're not familiar with sacramental liturgies, it can get really confusing. So I broke this down into the boxes of how liturgy goes, and on the front, just to kind of cover a little bit basics. I mean, the Armenian Rite belongs, kind of going back a little bit to the genealogy, is to the Antiochian family, which should be the Syriac, which maybe we might sense a little bit more when we get into Syria and Lebanon. Also used by the Uniates and the Gregorians. It's a pattern that's found in liturgies that come really basically from St. John Chrysostom and St. Basil. St. Basil would be like central Turkey, Caesarea, Cappadocia, provinces of things. Had a lot of influence. And the shape that I have kind of here, which is, like I said, it might be slightly different here, and you can correct me. This is how I've experienced it in the United States, the liturgy as I've got it written out here. If you follow the 2 hours, as Paul was suggesting back at Eshmiazin, it might be slightly different than this format, but this is how I've come to understand the liturgy that's been used since about the year 400. The service, it's called the Divine Liturgy, or Surp Badara, and of which Holy Communion is part of. It's the central action of the Christian community, which all followers of Christ are bound as one. Holy Communion is also known to Armenians as the Holy Eucharist, which also means Thanksgiving. The community of believers gather at a sacred site on the Lord's Day. Biragi? They're not in your heads, so I guess I'm doing good so far. Wherein within the church celebrates God revealed to all by way of Holy Scripture and His body and blood. The liturgy, by point of that too, to make point to say is, I think Ray was making a comment on the bus about the liturgy is a reenactment of Scripture. It's taking Old Testament stories, it's taking New Testament stories, it's taking the Psalms, which were the prayers that Jesus used, and incorporating these into a response and call, the Lord be with you and also with you, things that we've heard in Scripture, kind of incorporating these in a moment of sacred time that we can participate with the stories of Christ, the prophets, and the patriarchs as well. That becomes our story that we share in from historical, also kind of looking forward into the future, because we're creating the now, which our great-great-great-grandchildren will look back as us participating into that. So, and all of this is really our audience is the presence of God. The liturgy can be celebrated only once on the Lord's Day. As we saw this morning, it was just that one very long liturgy. Usually it begins, why it's so long, there's divine office. Breviary is prayed before the liturgy, and if you're kind of not really into the know where that's beginning and ending, you go from divine office, which is what all the priests need to say daily. As part of our ordination, we promise to say the Book of Office or Divine Prayers, and it flows right into the liturgy. The ritual of the worship known as Divine Liturgy is celebrated. Is celebrated in the Armenian Church, was formalized as it now appears near the end of the 10th century. I know I said I was saying 400, but that was kind of where it started taking its shape in the beginning. And the language of the Divine Liturgy is Classical Armenian Karpar. It was a creation of the Armenian alphabet that the Divine Liturgy and other ceremonies the Church took on their Armenian character as spiritual expression and for the people. And in saying that, always keep in mind that even like all of us in there, when you saw people as tourists taking pictures and things, when you're there, whether you're on your knees or you're standing or any of those yoga positions that we get up and down and praise and receiving the word of the Lord, whatever, we're not spectators, we're really participants when you enter the space. If you've ever been to any Orthodox church, a lot of times the women are inside with the children praying, and the men are out front at the main door having a cigar and chit-chatting and talking. Am I right? At least I do back home. All the men are always out front. But they feel like if they're on the property, they're participating. You know, they hear the music, they hear the heavy chant, they hear the things going on. They'll come in for communion, participate with that, maybe go back out and talk with the guys again. So it's kind of community in action. There's something sacred going on inside, and there's people outside living and telling the story of what happened this week. Yeah, my farm burned down, or my crops are not doing good, or yeah, I got new kids, and I don't know. The stories are happening inside and out of two different sort of cosmic levels. And I've broken up inside here. We'll go through it kind of really quickly. There are 4 sections of the entire service. There's the preparation, the synaxis, the Eucharist, and the dismissal. And then I'm not going to read the rest of the synaxis there, just for those the Greek thing for those.
And by the way, the Lutherans have picked up the same here: entrance, word, meal, and sending. So the Western churches, post-Reformation even, built heavily on the early churches to get behind some of the Roman medieval practices of the Roman Church, which were, they wanted to kind of circumvent. So what Rick is saying about this, if you understand this 4-part, you will understand contemporary ELCA church.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It was entrance, word,
Meal, and then sending. So basically you enter, you hear from God, you respond at the table, and then you're on mission in the world. So it's and as I say, the drama, what Rick is sharing is, over the years, this takes shape. You really said it well. People were looking to feel parts of the Old Testament. So this is a way of summarizing the whole Bible in 4. It's a 4-law track, only of a different kind. Here, Bill Bright's 4 laws. Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. On that point, the readings that are picked for the day, they go by a lectionary, as does the Western Church. And the lectionary, the readings, whether it be the Old Testament, the Psalms, and the New Testament reading, which is usually some of the letters from Paul, Paul, and then the Gospel, they all have a theme that support each other. So you're doing catechetical work. You're doing Bible study basically every time you go to church. You're listening to music which is taken from the Scripture. So the whole thing is just reliving Scripture in just different ways and pulling it together where it becomes now your personal journey as well.